Walmart was bright and noisy, filled with families shopping for groceries and other things. Sam, a 6-year-old boy, held his mom's hand tightly as they walked through the store. Sam was curious by nature and loved exploring. His mom, however, was focused on the shopping list in her hand. "Stay close, Sam," his mom said, picking up some items from the shelf. Sam nodded, but his attention drifted to a shelf filled with colorful toys nearby. He couldn't resist. He let go of his mom's hand and walked toward the toys, fascinated by the bright cars and action figures. "I'll just look for a minute," he told himself, thinking he would be back before his mom noticed. He spent a few minutes looking at the toys, pressing buttons that made the cars light up and spin. But when he turned around, his mom was nowhere to be seen. "Mom," Sam called out softly. There was no response. He took a few steps toward the aisle where he thought she was, but she wasn't there either. Panic began to creep in as he walked faster, looking around. The store, which had felt lively and fun moments ago, suddenly seemed big and unfamiliar. Sam wandered into another section of Walmart. It was quieter here, with fewer people. The lights seemed dimmer, and rows of mannequins stood in the distance. Their lifeless eyes seemed to follow him as he walked past. Sam's small footsteps echoed in the stillness. "Mom," he called out again, louder this time. The only response was silence. His little heart started to beat faster. He didn't know which way to go, and everything looked the same. Suddenly, he heard a sound. It was faint, like a whisper, coming from the corner of the aisle. Sam froze. "Who's there?" he asked, his voice shaking. There was no answer, just the whisper again. It sounded like someone was calling his name. Sam looked around but didn't see anyone. He took a step back, and something behind him fell. He turned quickly and saw a mannequin's arm lying on the ground. Sam's fear grew as he noticed the mannequin seemed closer than before. "This can't be real," he whispered to himself, tears starting to form in his eyes. Sam stood frozen, staring at the mannequin's arm on the ground. He wanted to believe it had just fallen by accident, but something didn't feel right. The silence around him felt heavier, and the whisper he had heard earlier grew louder. It sounded as if someone was calling his name again. He turned to leave the quiet section of the store, but the lights above him flickered. The once bright Walmart now seemed darker, and the aisles stretched endlessly before him. Sam took a deep breath and started walking, hoping to find the main area of the store where he had last seen his mom. As he passed the mannequins, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were watching him. Their blank faces and stiff bodies looked harmless, but Sam's imagination ran wild. He glanced back once, and for a moment, he thought he saw one of their heads slightly turned toward him. "No, that's not possible," he said to himself, shaking his head. But fear had started to take over. The whispering returned, but this time it was closer. It sounded like it was coming from behind him. Sam quickened his pace, but no matter how fast he walked, the sound seemed to follow him. "Mom, where are you?" he called out again, his voice trembling. He turned down another aisle, hoping it would lead him back to where his mom might be. Instead, he found himself in another quiet section of the store. The shelves here were empty, and the lights were even dimmer. His small footsteps echoed loudly, making him feel even more alone. Suddenly, he heard a noise, a faint shuffling, like footsteps. Sam's heart pounded as he turned to look, but there was no one there. He kept walking, his hands trembling. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw movement. One of the mannequins seemed to shift slightly, its arm lifting just an inch. Sam stopped and stared, his body frozen with fear. The mannequin didn't move again, but the whisper grew louder. "Who's there?" Sam shouted, his voice cracking. The only answer was a faint laugh echoing through the empty aisles. Sam started to cry, realizing he was truly alone, or so he thought. Sam's hands trembled as he wiped the tears from his face. He had never felt this scared before. The quiet corners of Walmart felt more like a maze now, and the mannequins seemed to be everywhere. The faint laugh he had heard echoed again, sending chills down his spine. He wanted to scream for help, but his voice felt stuck. Taking a deep breath, he whispered to himself, "It's just my imagination." Nothing is real. But as he tried to move away, he saw something out of the corner of his eye, a shadow moving between the shelves. It wasn't his shadow. It was bigger and darker. Sam froze, staring at the spot where he thought the shadow had been, but nothing was there now. He turned to run, but his feet felt heavy as if the air around him had thickened. The whispering grew louder, and now it seemed to come from all directions. "Sam," the voice called. How did it know his name? "Leave me alone," he yelled, his voice shaky and filled with fear. He ran down the aisle, looking for a way out, but no matter where he went, he ended up back in the same spot. It was as if the store was changing around him, trapping him in this dark, empty section. The mannequins now seemed closer than before, and their blank faces felt almost alive. One mannequin's head was tilted in an odd way, and Sam could swear its eyes were following him. He backed away slowly, his small hands clutching his chest. Suddenly, he heard the sound of footsteps, heavy, slow footsteps, coming closer. "Who's there?" Sam shouted, his voice echoing in the silence. From the shadows, a tall figure began to emerge. It didn't look like a person. Its body was dark and seemed to shift like smoke, but its eyes glowed red. Sam gasped, stumbling backward. "You shouldn't be here," the figure said in a deep, chilling voice. Sam turned and ran as fast as he could, but the shadowy figure seemed to follow him effortlessly. Every time he looked back, it was closer, and the mannequin seemed to move, blocking his path. Sam's tiny heart raced. He didn't know where to go, but he knew one thing: he had to escape. Sam ran as fast as his little legs could carry him. The shadowy figure was close behind him, and the whispers were now louder, echoing in his ears. The mannequin seemed to shift and block the aisles no matter where he turned. It felt like the store was alive, trapping him in a terrifying game. Sam's breath came in short gasps as he ducked into a small corner behind a shelf. He pressed his back against the wall, trying to make himself invisible. His heart pounded so loudly that he thought the shadow could hear it. "Sam," the voice called again, slow and deep. "Go away. Please leave me alone," Sam whispered, tears rolling down his cheeks. The sound of heavy footsteps stopped nearby. Sam peeked out slowly and saw the dark figure standing just a few feet away. Its glowing red eyes scanned the area, as if searching for him. Sam quickly pulled his head back, covering his mouth to keep from making any noise. But then, something cold touched his shoulder. He froze. Turning slowly, he saw a mannequin's hand resting on him. Its blank face was now inches away, and its head tilted slightly, almost as if it was looking right at him. Sam screamed and jumped back. The dark figure turned towards the sound and started moving again. Sam scrambled to his feet and ran, tears blurring his vision. "Help! Someone, please help me!" he shouted, but his voice echoed back, as if the store itself was mocking him. As he ran, the lights above him flickered, and the aisles grew darker. He tripped over something and fell hard to the ground. When he looked back, he saw that he had tripped over another mannequin's arm. But this one wasn't lying still, it was moving, crawling toward him. "No, stay away," Sam cried, pushing himself up and running again. The shadowy figure's voice echoed through the store. "You can't leave, Sam. You belong to us now." Sam didn't understand what was happening, but he knew he couldn't stop. He had to find a way out before it was too late. As he turned another corner, he saw something strange, an old, broken door slightly open, with a faint light shining through. Could this be his escape? Sam stared at the old, broken door. The faint light coming from behind it gave him a small spark of hope. Maybe this is the way out, he thought, wiping the tears from his face. He ran towards the door, his tiny footsteps echoing in the dark aisle. Behind him, the shadowy figure's voice called out, "You can't escape, Sam. This is your home now." The mannequins were moving again, their lifeless faces now twisted into eerie smiles. They seemed to be closing in on him, their arms reaching out. Sam didn't stop. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was small and empty, with walls covered in old, cracked paint. A single light bulb flickered weakly above him. He slammed the door shut and locked it, his hands shaking. For a moment, there was silence. Sam pressed his ear to the door, listening. The whispers and footsteps had stopped. Maybe he was safe now. But then, a soft knock came at the door. "Sam, let us in," the voice said, slow and haunting. Sam backed away, shaking his head. "Leave me alone, please," he shouted. The door started to rattle, as if someone was trying to force it open. Sam looked around the room for a place to hide, but there was nowhere to go. Suddenly, the flickering light bulb went out, plunging the room into darkness. Sam's breathing grew faster as he huddled in a corner. He could hear the whispers again, but now they were inside the room. "We're here, Sam," the voice said. A cold breeze brushed past him, making him shiver. In the dim light from under the door, Sam saw a shadow forming in the corner of the room. It grew taller and darker until the glowing red eyes appeared again. The figure stepped closer, its deep voice echoing in the tiny room. "Why are you running, Sam? Stay with us forever," it said. Sam screamed as loud as he could. Suddenly, the door burst open, and a bright light filled the room. "Sam," it was his mom's voice. She ran in with a store worker, and the shadow vanished. Sam threw himself into his mom's arms, crying, "Mom, they were going to take me." She hugged him tightly. "You're safe now, Sam," she said. As they left the room, Sam looked back. The light bulb flickered once more, and he saw the shadow watching him from the corner. The nightmare wasn't over.